What's up guys, Houndish here, and today I've got some cool Destiny 2 stuff to talk about. So some interesting words from Luke Smith about the raid, and kind of the approach for the raid, as well as some interesting little tidbits. He also spoke about lore in the game, and how it's going to appear on certain pieces of gear, much like Grimoire kind of appeared in Grimoire cards, which is pretty big if you're a fan of the Grimoire in Destiny. I wanted to go over some other stuff including Engram storage, reset day, and a couple of other things, so let's get into it. Of course, Luke Smith did a panel at PAX yesterday, and he spoke about a bunch of interesting stuff, including his job and kind of Bungie and some of the approach that they take to certain things, but he also gave out a couple of really interesting bits of information. So he was asked about Grimoire and whether that's still going to kind of be a thing. Of course, they have said they are kind of removing that and they want to put that stuff into the game. And Luke Smith said that for exotics, as well as weapons and armor from the raid and trials, will have a lore tab, which kind of slides out and offers kind of a story about that piece of gear. And he added that there will be a bunch of stuff to read and learn about gear pieces and the story behind what's going on in the game, where those gear pieces came from. And for the raid and trials gear in particular, this is going to be really huge for Grimoire fans, because you essentially get more of a contained version of that stuff inside of the game. And I think a lot of people had anticipated that this wouldn't necessarily, appear in this format anymore, and that it would all be kind of dialogue in missions and things like that. He did say that all pieces of gear will kind of have flavor text in the game, but from what it sounds like, these actual kind of additional big chunks of lore that will be written on this particular tab on weapons and gear does kind of come with the exotic stuff, as well as the trials and the raid gear. So, essentially the high-end end game pieces of gear. It's worth me pointing that out, but I think this is really, really cool, and a lot of people are going to be happy that there will be kind of Grimoire in some respect and lore in the game actually written down. Moving on, Luke Smith spoke about the raid, and specifically he spoke about the release time. So the decision to launch on September the 13th was initially because they want the raid to be close to launch, but he added that by launching the raid on a Wednesday, it would mean that players would get the additional reset on the 12th, which is a Tuesday, to run Nightfalls and other endgame stuff. And this does make sense because we'll be within the first reset when the game drops, so we can do a bunch of the higher level stuff for that week, but then of course the following week we get to run the higher level stuff again on the Tuesday. And they didn't want it to be kind of where we had to grind all day on the Tuesday before the raid dropped or something like that. There will be an opportunity to do that the day before. He went on to say that when they set out to build the raid, they wanted to do something a little bit different, but they wanted it to be something that as a player you could believe is possible within the universe of the game, and they've kind of described it this way before. But essentially Smith said that they want the raid to pile on responsibility to the player, and for players to be aware that it's there waiting, because it is part of the arc of the game and what's actually going on in the world of Destiny 2. He actually referred to back in Destiny 1 when the Vault of Glass launched. Some people kind of said that they added it to the game later on, but it wasn't the case. It was always there. They wanted people to know it was there and that it was coming. And obviously that's a very exciting part of the raid for the community, the build up to when it finally opens up. Wrath of the Machine was one of those as well. We knew that that kind of area outside of the raid would be where it actually started, and of course that built excitement because you can see that doorway kind of just gleaming, ready to open up. So I think that's going to be really, really awesome. But next he referred to the new weapon again called Midnight Coup, and this is a weapon which will drop during the raid, but he links back to the lore tab for the weapons, and this will tell the story of what the Midnight Coup was and the characters that were involved in it. He didn't want to spoil anything here, but I think this really helps to give us an idea of the thought process with the raid and how this one's going to be a core component of what's happening in the game. They're kind of tying those things together in a more coherent way than what we've seen before. And it looks like there will be a ton of lore linked to the raid that you can actually see in game. So considering everything we've just spoken about, I also wanted to confirm that reset day is of course still on a Tuesday for anyone who's wondering. Quite a few people have actually been asking me, so they did confirm this firstly in a podcast I believe quite a while back, that Tuesday would be the day for the reset, but also Luke Smith in the PAX panel just confirmed that we would have a second reset on the Tuesday before the raid drops. So if you're wondering, there you go. Up next, I wanted to talk briefly about Engrams and some loot stuff in Destiny 2. They confirmed that you don't have to have your best possible gear equipped when you decode Engrams in order to get, highest level drops. They actually take account of everything you have on your character. But some interesting things to note are that Engrams set their power level when they actually drop now. So you can see this legendary Engram right here is at 210 power. So that isn't defined at the time that it's actually decoded or decrypted, sorry. But they did add that the loot you're getting from the Engram won't actually roll until the Engram is decrypted. So there are a couple of interesting notes here. No longer will Engram hoarding actually be beneficial for things like expansions, obviously because these Engrams are light level specific as soon as they drop. I've also heard quite a few people talking about how there are only 10 slots for Engrams and that this doesn't necessarily seem like too much, and I kind of agree, although I do believe that any others will go to the Postmaster beyond the 10 that you have in your inventory. And it's also worth remembering that it looks like you can actually decrypt these Engrams at planetary NPCs, so if you're on a specific location you won't necessarily have to leave, go to the farm, decrypt them, come back or anything like that. So it seems like these systems kind of all make sense, but I just thought that that was some stuff worth pointing out. And up next, I wanted to just briefly show some images of the Collector's Edition for Destiny 2. So these were posted by Canadian, I think that's how you say that name. And we can see the outer boxing right there and everything like that. Then when you open it up, there's this pretty awesome steel book. You have the hardcover book with, I think it's actually Gol or the console on the front of the book, and then a solar panel case. It actually comes with a little USB solar panel, which is pretty cool. And then obviously inside, slightly more spoilery, but you get a look at a bunch of kind of Cabal stuff, some backstory and imagery and everything like that, which is really, really awesome. And you get the image right there of what we're calling the Leviathan, the huge ship, and also some kind of concept art that shows a much more kind of worm-like, creature-like version of the same thing, which is really interesting. And then of course the kind of bag there as well, which Hawthorne has. So really, really cool stuff, and I thought some of you guys might like a quick look at that. And finally, I wanted to briefly mention a supposed leak of Destiny 2's second expansion. So there are potential spoilers here, although this isn't confirmed to actually be true, but people are going to talk about this, so I figured I'd just kind of give my 2 cents on it right here. It is supposedly going to be called the Tyrant's Crypt, and they say that it's based around Rasputin and the Warminds. I'm not going to kind of specifically detail everything here, but they say there's going to be a new zone, a kind of explorable location, but this is where it kind of doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. They say that it's going to have 4 strikes and 2 Crucible maps with 1 new mode, 1 raid, 1 arena activity, as well as Lost Sectors, adventures, quests and gear. And honestly, I think that just sounds like a ton of content, to have a new zone and then to see like 4 strikes but 2 Crucible maps. Just it doesn't seem to make sense in terms of the amount of content there. There is some kind of convincing stuff in the post, but at the same time, just the amount of content there and the type of content doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but that's just my opinion. And that pretty much sums up this video, guys. So I hope you have enjoyed it. As always, let me know any thoughts you have down below in the comment section. If you've enjoyed it, a like is very much appreciated. And if you want to save 10% on Control Freak products, you can follow the link in the description or use code Houndish and you'll save yourself a few bucks. But for now, I appreciate you watching as always. We're so close to Destiny 2. Just bring it on, man. I'll catch you guys very soon.